All right, so in this video, what I want to do is kind of try to put some things together. We've covered HStacks and VStacks, we've covered images, we've covered creating other views and breaking them out into separate pieces, and passing state variables from one to the next to pass parameters and so forth. So what I want to do is spend a little bit of time. Let's just put it all together. And if you look over here in the canvas, this is what I want to create. So what we had before was just a simple list of city names as part of a text view. And we want to do something that looks a little more beautiful, and we want to get to this. So let's step in and see how to do that. So the first thing I'm going to do is I had already committed that code into Git before I went and made all these changes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually go back and revert back to where I was before. So in my source control, I can just do stash changes, and I can say stash. And when I do that, what it's going to do is it's going to take me back. Let's go back to here, to my content view. And let's go ahead and hit compile here, just because we changed a bunch of code and got rid of some things, and do resume here. And it's going to take us back to what we had before. So this is one thing that's kind of neat. When you use commit, when you're committing changes, and then let's say you've made a bunch of additional changes and you don't like what you did and you'd like to just sort of discard all that and go back to where you were, do the stash. Stash will stash it away. You can always bring it back later if you want. Typically, I don't. I just stash it, and it's like in the garbage, and I'm back to where I was at a point that I liked, where I committed. All right, so here we are. We're back to our just simple list here. And we want to make some changes to sort of get to that final view that we wanted to do. So one of the things we know is that we were going to have images in there. And so one thing to think about when you go after this is it doesn't really matter necessarily where you start, but what you want to do is break it down into small chunks and just do those little pieces at a time. So for example, if I go to assets here, I know I'm going to need some assets or images of cities. And what I did is I went to Unsplash, which is one of the websites I ask you to use in the course. And that's because all of the images there are copyright free, so that's good for us to use. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just drag and drop those back into our asset directory here. So off screen, you can't see, I just grabbed them, but there they are, and I'm dragging them in. And now I've dragged all those images in. Again, I have a full video on using images, so I just am going to go through this quickly. Over here on the right, with all of these selected, one of the things I want to do is go down here to scale and say single scale. And what that means is that these are the same scale no matter what type of device we're on. So we've done that. The other thing is these names are all crazy names that came in from Unsplash, so I want to fix those. So what I'm going to go through is rename them into something simpler so that we can reference them. All right, so I've renamed them to very simple names here, and then we'll be able to use those in our image names much easier than those others. So let's think about when we looked at the makeup of what we had to create. It is a line for every city, or that's the way I think about it. Each one of those is going to be its own view element. And so what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new view here to sort of represent every one of those lines. And so I'm going to just say, begin, do Swift UI. And we're going to call it, how about city line view? What I want to do is say, well, one of the things I do know that I want to include is going to be this image. This image is over there to the left. So I'm going to take text out and I'll say image. And then I know that it's not a system name, it's a regular name because these are the names of the images that I brought in. So I could just put in here Chicago as an example, and now my image shows up. And remember, just following along in the normal video on images, we need to say resizable. We need to say fit to scale. And then I think what I'm going to do is probably just make it a width of, let's say, 50. Let's see what that looks like. Okay, that's too small, so let's do 100. That looks better, so we'll do that. And now we've created this image that's going to go in this line. Now, it's right in the center. We know we wanted it over to the left. So the way to do that would be to put this image in an HStack and then put something to the right of it. So we're going to do that. I'm going to right-click, say embedded in HStack. And then, of course, if I just wanted to try it out and push it over to the left, I would just add a spacer here, and sure enough, I've moved it all the way to the left. And I may or may not do padding right here. I can apply padding on the HStack, or when this city line view is actually used by the parent view to put all these out, it could apply the padding as well. So we'll just leave the padding out for now. So the next thing we wanted to do was we had over here on the right, we would have some text which had the city name, and then we also had text for the population. So to do that, since it's one on top of the other, that's a VStack, right? So let's take this spacer out for a minute, and we'll just say VStack. And in the VStack, we had two texts. One was the name of the city, which I'll just for now type Chicago. And here I will also type population, 3 million, let's say. So now I've created this VStack here. And I notice that they're centered on each other. So we probably want to change that alignment so that they're aligned to the left. So we can go up here and say alignment. And remember, we don't do left or right. We do leading or trailing due to the fact that languages could actually be leading, but then written from right to left. So we can say alignment leading here. We'll go ahead and hit try again. And now we have it pushed over to the left. That's good. Now, this whole thing needs to actually get moved to the left as well. So again, in our HStack, on the other side of that VStack, we could again put a spacer. And when we do that, it should push everything over to the left. So this is starting to build out our line, right? The next thing we had was over here on the right, we had stars for a star rating for how great that we rated the city. So rather than code that in here, I'm going to just create yet another view. So again, I do Command N. I'm going to pick a Swift UI view. And we're going to call this star rating view. Go ahead and resume here. And now what we can do is, we know we don't want that. What we want is a set of stars. And they are going to be left to right. So what does that tell us? Probably an HStack. And then every element of the HStack is going to be anywhere from 0 to 5 stars, let's say. So what we can do is use a ForEach to do that. And even though we don't have an array, we can use a range. So I could say ForEach 0 ... less than 5. Whoop. And so I've created that range. And then I need to do this trailing closure, which is basically going to pass in the variable, which is iterating over this. And we now have our spot to put our stars. So we could say at this point, image. Oh, and before I do that, how would I know where I can get stars from? Well, we want to use SF symbols to do that. So I have SF symbols running. And So to show you how I do this with SF symbols, I'm going to just pop out of full screen mode for a second. And I will go over here. I'm going to bring over SF symbols. So this is what I've run. And it shows me all the symbols at this point. And I can just go up here to search and type star. And sure enough, we get a bunch of different stars. But I think this one right here, star.fill, is the one that we could use. So I will take that away. We will go back to our full screen mode. And we're going to enter here image, system name, because this is part of the SF symbols, so it's an icon that's already built in. And we can say star.fill. And when we do that, we see that we get 5 stars immediately, right? So the ForEach is going from 0 to 4. And we are indexing over each one of those. We aren't actually using index, by the way, so we could do an underbar here. And that just says that, you know, even though it's passing something, we're sort of ignoring what it's passing, and we're just basically still filling out all 5 stars. So we do notice that there's some padding here that we would like to probably shrink down a little bit. But, you know, we haven't added any padding here. But it turns out the HStack has some implicit padding that it's going to do unless you remove it. So, or spacing. So if I do open paren here, I can see the 3 different choices. I'm going to say spacing. And if I say 0, now you'll notice how tight they are together. So we now have whatever spacing is there or looks like is just because that's part of the PNG of the star that has that. So I kind of like it. I think that's about the right spacing that we want there. So now we have this star rating view, and this is something that we wanted to use in our city line view. So if we come back here to city line view, and we resume what we have here, we want those stars over here on the right. So we already have our HStack with our image. We have a little VStack here for this. We have our spacer, which is going to push whatever we put after it all the way to the right. And then here I can say star rating view. And I now have my stars all the way to the right. So we're making some good progress on building this out. So let's stop here in this video. And I encourage you to do this yourself and try this out for yourself. And I will pick up in the next one, and we'll continue to refine this.